Hi everyone, good evening. Here we are back with another session for Science Grade 7. Before that, I would like to introduce Swiflearn. So Swiflearn is an online learning platform where there are 100% of live interactive classes. Personalized attention is given to you with a batch of 6 students maximum. A dedicated academic mentor will be dedicated, like a dedicated academic mentor is going to track your work and your progress. And we also cover syllabus as per the school exam schedule and handle customized request for, like, if you want a test or something, we will of course definitely going to help you for the same. Moving further in we have our key features that talks about detailed reports, Swiflearn academic test series, and take ultimate test practices and subjective test for school examination. So you can book your trial classes today itself if you want to try and learn with Swiflearn. Moving further, if you have not yet subscribed the Swiflearn channel, please do that. After that, press the bell icon and then never miss any update on any live session that's going to come, right? So let's begin with the chapter that is plant reproduction. And firstly, let's see what are the objectives of our class today. Today, we are going to cover here the sexual reproduction, reproductive parts in plants, pollination, types of pollination, and at the end, we are going to finish up with fruits and seed formation, how they are formed. So, little recapitulation of our previous session. In the previous class, we had studied about the reproduction and its types. Let's quickly revise it. What exactly reproduction is? The process of producing new individuals from their parent is called reproduction. Okay, so in producing new individual, like similar kind of individual or similar kind of thing from their parent is known as reproduction, right? Quite simple. So let's recall what is sexual reproduction. So, sexual reproduction, the new plants are produced with the help of seeds of a plant. This process is known as sexual reproduction. And here, what are the parts of the plants that work over here or come together? That is your flowers and your fruits that participate here in the reproduction process. The new plant produced contain the characteristics of both the plant, the parent plant, and the participate, like characteristics of both the parent plants participate and form the new seed or new plant or new kind of a sapling that you are growing at your end. Okay. So if we talk about, like we just discussed, that there are two parts, there are two things that participate in sexual reproduction. That is the fruit part or there is the flower part. So the flower part of a plant are its reproductive organ that participate in the sexual reproduction process. Now, how does it happen and what exactly happens? Like how this flower does do that thing. So now the flower is divided into two portions. There is a unisexual flower and there is a bisexual flower. Okay, so if I talk about a unisexual flower, like a papaya flower, it's either a male or a female part works. On the other hand, in a bisexual flower, we have both the things present over there. Both male and female parts are present over there in a bisexual plant. Hopefully, these two terms are clear by now. There's a unisexual flower and there is a bisexual flower. So in a unisexual flower, there is a male part or a female part. But on the other hand, in a bisexual flower, there are both. There is both the things are present into a same flower. Suppose there is kind of a female part as well, and there is a male part as well. Example, in a sunflower. So there are both the parts present over there. Moving further, how the bisexual flowers or what the different examples of those here, we can go through a few examples. The flowers that have both the androecium, that is the male reproductive part, and gynoecium, that is the female reproductive part, are called bisexual flowers, like a mustard plant or a pea plant or a sunflower. Okay, so these are a few examples of bisexual flowers. Clear? Moving further, what are monosexual flowers? Some flowers have either male or female reproductive parts, but not both, like watermelon, papaya, or cucumber, right? So they are monosexual plants. So we just read about a bisexual plant where both female and male reproductive parts are present in the flower. On the other hand, the next one, the monosexual, where we have just the male or the female reproductive part present. That is watermelon, papaya, or cucumber. Moving further, if you can see this little diagram on your screen, it talks about if there's a flower, what are the different parts of the plant that are participating in a sexual reproduction of a plant. So there, if we talk about this thin, very, very little thin is known as a stamen. And stamen has its two parts, the anther and the filament. Moving ahead, we have this one that is right there at the center, the bigger part. This is the pistil, and it has four very, very important parts. There is stigma, there is style, there is ovary, and then inside the ovary, there's the ovule. Of course, we will learn them in a little bit more detail. This is just a introduction for you to all those things. And how are they supported? Like, how does the plant contain them? It's been covered by the petals, right? And the sepal also help them to stay stable onto a flower so that they do not break or they do not die out. So if you even have observed, even like sometimes when the flower just dries out and the petals even fall, still the sepals hold the pistil and the stamen, if you have seen. Like, it is quite evidently visible in a hibiscus plant or a rose plant, where you can see all those parts coming out, and even if the petals come out, you can still see the pattern now, right? So the male reproductive parts of a plant is called the stamen, and the female reproductive part of a plant are called pistil, right? So this part right here, the thin one, is the stamen, the male reproductive part of the plant, and pistil here, right here, that has four different I would say parts inside it, is your female part, consisting, the four parts are stigma, there is style, there is ovary, and there is ovule, right? Further, now let us discuss a little bit more detail what a stamen consists of. So the stamen is the entire part, the entire thing. And now in a stamen, there are two parts like we discussed, the anthers and the filament, okay? And inside the anther, there is the very, very important part. There is very, very useful thing hidden, that is the pollen sac. Okay, so the pollen sacs are very, very important. Why? Because these are the main seed. We'll discuss it a little bit. We'll just stop right here and we will discuss it, this thing a little further. Moving further, the pistil, that is the female reproductive part, have very important parts like, firstly, the stigma. The first thing right here onto to the top, that is your stigma. Then the stigma is a sticky surface where pollen grains get attached. And I hope you remember what were the pollen. The pollen sacs has the pollen grains inside it. That's why I told you that it is a very, very important part. So now the stigma right here, if you can see the female reproductive part in a plant, the topmost part over here is your stigma. And how does stigma work? It is the sticky surface where pollen grains get attached to. When the pollen grains get attached to the stigma, what happens next? Now, there is a long tube right here, if you can see, right? There's a long tube right here. This is known as style, okay? And this style is connected to the ovary. Okay, right here is the ovary, and this is the style that connects the stigma, like something like a pollen has right now come and stick onto the stigma right here. Then the stigma, the pollen will be taken from the stigma through this style and then taken up to your ovary. I hope we are clear till here. Moving further, what does the ovary do? It contains eggs in which the female gametes or eggs are formed. Okay, so as you know, this is the female part. So of course, there will be female eggs over here, right? And now the stigma is carrying the thing over there through style and coming and dropping it right here inside the ovary. Okay, now how the male gametes reach to the female gametes in the plant, right? So there was a different part all over different part, right? If you can just little go back, like the pollen sacs, right there in the stamen, that is the male part, and the female part was pistil. So, but how is this happening? How are these male gametes reaching to the female gametes in plant? What exactly is happening around that the process is moving, and who exactly is picking or dropping it, and what exactly is happening behind the scene? What exactly is happening behind the scene? So the male and the female gametes fuses and form a zygote. The male gametes reach the female gametes by the process of pollination. Okay, so if you read the first sentence again, it says the male and the female gametes fuses and form a zygote. And when does it happen? When the pollen, like when the pollen thing is like being transferred to the female part from the stigma to the pistil, it is transferring from one place to the another, goes through the style, and then to the ovule, and then they fuse together, both the eggs fuse together, they form a zygote. Now, how exactly is this happening? The process is known as pollination. The transfer of male gametes reaching to the female gametes by the process of pollination. I hope this new term is clear, the pollination, where the male part or the male ovule or the male thing is reaching to the female part is known as the process of pollination. The pollen grains have a tough covering which allows them in surviving the different climatic conditions, right? So of course that is happening because like if a male plant is little far away, then what about the pollens, right? They have to fly, or they need to like they come with the water or something, so they need to have a little hard covering around them, otherwise they in the process of reaching to a female gamete they can die in between. For that they have a tough covering which allows them in surviving the different climatic conditions. Okay, now, due to their lightweight, wind and water often carry them away to different parts, different plants, right? Sometimes the pollen grains also get attached to insects, which carry them to different flowers. This process of transfer of pollen grains from one another to stigma is called pollination. I'm repeating myself here. The process of transfer of pollen grains from one anther to stigma is called pollination. Now, in pollination method, the pollen grains are picked from anther, that is the male part of the flower, and transferred to the stigma, female part of the flower. Right? The process is known as pollination. If you can see, there are the pollen grains are right here, over here onto the male part of the flower. The pollen grains like leave the surface from there, maybe due to wind, maybe due to water, maybe due to insects taking them from one place to another. They leave their surface, they move, right? And then they reach up to the sticky part of the female reproductive part, that is the stigma. They reach over there, they stick to the stigma, then they reach to the ovary and then get connected to the ovule inside the ovary. I hope we are clear till here. Moving further, there are different types of pollination that are happening around us. There is self-pollination and there is cross-pollination happening. So we'll read about both of them here in little detail. So we'll talk about firstly self-pollination. What exactly self-pollination is? So as the name suggests, self-pollination is kind of a thing that is happening in the same flower itself. Okay, the pollen grains does not need to go to other part or maybe to other flower somewhere. No, it's happening right there into the same flower. Pollen grains are transferred from an anther to the stigma of the same flower or the flowers on the same plant. Okay, they're happening inside the same plant itself. They're not moving away from their own plant right where they are. Okay, so that is the self pollination. Moving further is your cross-pollination. Cross-pollination, the pollen grains are transferred from one anther to stigma of the flower on the other plants, which is of the same kind. Remember, of course, here cross pollination is happening, right? The grains are moving from one plant to the another, but the plant needs to be of the same kind. Okay, so from the anther to the stigma of the flower of to the other plant, but they have to be of the same kind, and this is of cross pollination. So right now we learned about two kinds of pollination. Firstly, self pollination, where the pollen grains from the anther, the male reproductive part, are going to the stigma of the female reproductive part, but the plant is same, the flower is same, or at least the plant, like suppose every plant, a flowering plant, have multiple flowers onto it, so it's going and transferring onto the same flower over there, right? And then into cross pollination, the anther is being like, the pollen grains from the anther are transferring to the stigma of the flower onto other plants, but the plants needs to be of the same kind. Moving further, now we have read from the anther, the pollen grains are being transferred to the stigma, right? And from the stigma, what is happening when this gets stick to the stigma by the style, they're coming up to the ovule, right? So what exactly is happening after that? A zygote is formed. So right inside the ovule, okay, right inside the ovule, the zygote is formed as the fusion between the male and the female gamete. Okay, so when the male and the female gamete mix together, fuse together, mix together, they form a zygote. So this is another new term that we learned over here. That is a zygote. And what is a zygote? When the female gametes and the male gametes mix together, they fuse together, they form a zygote. This process of formation of zygote is called fertilization. Okay, so now the process of moving the pollen grains from the male to the female part is known as pollination, right? How they are transferring, and the process where they reach to the where they have reached already to the female part. Now from the style they move to ovule, and both the male and the female part get mixed together. That is known as fertilization, as they form a zygote after mixing and combining together. The zygote is formed, and this is known as fertilization. Clear? Then the zygote develops and turns into an embryo. Now, when they both fuses together, they form a zygote, and after some time, when nutrients are provided and the food is supplied, it turns into an embryo. Now, how this fertilization process, we have discussed it in detail. Let us see through a diagram right in front of us. How? Now, the pollen grains are right here, right? They are got stuck to got stuck over here with the help of the tube. They reach on to down below to the ovule, right? They've come into the ovum right here, and they form a zygote. Right? The pollen tube brings it, then forms over here to form a zygote. That is where, as soon as the zygote is formed, the process is known as fertilization. Right? Let us once more go back and read the definition to make it more clear, where it says, a zygote is formed as the fusion between the male and the female gametes occur. This process of formation of the zygote is called fertilization. That is right here shown into your picture, right? Now, how fruits and seeds are formed exactly? How are fruits and seeds forming when the zygote, ovule and everything coming in the process? How is this fruit formation is happening? So after the fertilization has happened, the zygote has formed. Now, after the fertilization process, the ovary of the flowers grows and develops into a fruit, right? We saw that that it goes into the ovule or the ovum right below, that round part of the female reproductive function, right? It goes over there. Now now over there, what is happening is it's getting nutritions and everything, right? And it grows and grows and grows. And then if you see, the petals and everything are being shed afterwards. And what is left, if you see, that round part is only left, and that turns into a fruit, right? And that turns into a fruit. The remaining part of the flower falls off, exactly what we discussed right now. The ovules develop and form the seeds of the fruit again. And if you have seen, there is a fruit in front of you, but whenever you cut a fruit, there are different kinds of seeds coming. Some are big, some are small, some are very, very small. Every kind of seed you find it out in, like all the fruits or flowers you eat or you see around yourself, right? Now, how fruits in moving further, the embryo is enclosed. The embryo is enclosed inside the seeds. Some fruits are fleshy and juicy, such as mango, apple, and orange. Some fruits are hard, like almonds and walnut. But the process that is happening is exactly the same. The pollination is happening, the fertilization is happening, the embryo is forming, and then we get that fleshy, fruity kind of an fruit with us. And inside that particular thing, again, we have our seeds over there, right? So the cycle is repeating itself. If you can see, the cycle is repeating itself. There is no loss of seed in between. The process how that same fruit can grow into another tree, and that tree can turn out into another flower, and that flower can turn out into another kind of like the same kind of a fruit over here, right? The cycle is being repeated. The seed is nowhere lost, right? Now, oh yeah, so right here in front of you, we just write what we were discussing, that the cycle is self-sustainable. The cycle is growing and the same thing is being repeated here again. So here we start from right here. So this is the master plant of the flower where fertilization occurs, because it has both the things. It has the female reproductive part over here, the ovary, and the ovule is right over here, right? So if you see, the style is also over here, right? The male reproductive part. So if it is a self-reproductive thing, so then it goes right here into the stigma, goes into the ovary, it turns it into a fruit. Like after the fertilization happens over here, it turns out into a fruit, right? And that fruit to contain a seed, right? That seed is right hidden into the embryo, okay, right, hidden into the embryo. And by any chance, if that seed got like favorable conditions, the favorable weather conditions and everything, it germinates again. When the seed germinates, it grows into a little plant or a shoot, and then later on it again becomes a master plant that can flower and fertilize, right? So this was the first part of our session. Moving to the other part of the session. But before that, do you remember how do trees in the forest grow by themselves? Remember? So in a natural forest, these new trees grow from the seeds that drop from the trees under which the new tree will automatically grow. Isn't it? Now that seeds that drop down from the plant or the tree that is right above, they are carried away through wind, through water, or through animals around in the forest, and then they grow on different places, and the entire ecosystem is self-sustainable to itself, right? Everything is moving around here and there, and trees are trees are growing like inside that ecosystem of a forest, right? Moving further, how are these, or what is this seed dispersal? Like we learned right now, like we discussed right now, the seeds are moving from one place to the another, and that is how the entire forest is growing, right? Some trees are small, some trees are large, and some are old and some are new. But how is this happening, right? This is happening because of seed dispersal. But how exactly the seed dispersal is happening? The transportation of seeds, the transportation of seeds from the parent plant to the different places is called as seed dispersal. Seed dispersal allows growth of same kind of plants in different regions. Okay, so seed dispersal allows growth of same kind of plant in different regions. So how are they reaching to the different region? We just discussed that the seed fall and then they grow, right? But there are many aspects that take away the seed that has fallen from that particular tree to other parts of the forest, right? And there are many benefits of that particular thing as well. Let us discuss that as well. Now, this is helpful because it minimize, what does it do? It minimize the competition for the food, the sunlight, the water, and mineral among the plant of the same kind. So you feel like if like there are multiple mango trees standing at the same place, they will require that huge amount of water, they will require that huge amount of sunlight, and they will be fighting amongst themselves for the minerals as well. But because of the dispersal of seeds, that means moving seeds from one place to another, that means they have a gap in between. So whatever kind of minerals they need, whatever kind of water or sunlight, how much quantity of water they need, they will get it sufficiently if they are scattered around that area and not clustered into a same place. Okay, that's why seed dispersal is very helpful. Now it allows them to grow in different habitats, right? It allows them to grow in different habitats as well, like dispersal. Maybe someday there was rain or there was heavy wind, so it picked up that seed from one place and maybe transferred it kilometers away, right? So the habitat automatically got changed, right? Now, the dispersal of seeds by air. What kind of seed does the wind takes away with it, right? So for the wind, the seeds needs to be very light. They need to have a kind of a structure that get flown away with the wind or blown away with the wind. Yeah, let's read what's written right here in front of us. The seeds of the plants like cotton, like skymore and dandelions are very light and have either wing-like structure or hair on them, right? These enable them to carried away easily by wind, right? Like we discussed, they need to have a kind of a structure. The build-up should be like that, that the wind can take away or they can blow with the wind, they can flow with the wind. Okay, so that's why they have a hairy kind of a structure or they have a wing kind of a structure. And of course, they are very light in their formation. Okay, now if you can see the drumstick maple winged seed, if you can just see over here, these are the ones onto your right hand side. If you can see, there's a diagram. It shows the seed is having, the seed is right here and it has a wing kind of a structure. So that wing kind of a structure will help it flow with the wind. Okay, then we have grass that has very lightweighted seeds. Then we have ack, hairy seeds. Then sunflower, they also have hairy fruits and things that flows away with the wind. Moving further, water also plays a very important role in distributing the seeds or taking away the seeds from one place to another. Okay, like coconut have spongy and fibrous coating, so it floats on water and can be transferred from, the seed can be transferred from one place to another. Now, we also learned and we also heard in between that animals also play a very important part in pollination. How? Animals like bees or butterflies or these kind of things, they carry different kinds of pollen grains from one place to another, right? And other animals, like huge animals who do some, like the animals that eat fruits and vegetables around in the forest, they also like kind of move to different places which help in spreading the seeds. Like they eat, so some of them get stuck into them, or some of them on their body, they carry it from one place to another. Okay. Further, now pollination by animals like spiny seeds like xanthium and urena get attached to bodies of animals. If you see, xanthium is right here onto your right hand side of the screen. This is how it looks. This is how small it is, and this is how it easily get stick to the animal feet or to animal skins, and then they can take this away from one place to another, right? Now the fruit burst also like scatters around all the seeds, right? Sometimes bursting of fruits leads to dispersal of seeds like castor and balsam. Okay, so these are the fruit that get burst, and when they burst, they release in the air, release on the ground and in the air a huge amount of seeds, and then they get stick to other things, and then the pollination of or the seeds moving from one place to another happens due to different reasons that we have discussed right now. Okay, grade 7 students, we have few questions. There are some questions listed here. I will suggest you to note them down before we end the session. Note the questions down, and then later on can answer them to revise whatever we have done during the session today. So firstly, what is sexual reproduction? Right? Where both male and female parts are working together to form the new similar kind of, I would say, similar kind of product, like a fruit or a flower, are contributing. That is a sexual reproduction. What are unisexual and bisexual flowers? I hope we got enough evidences and enough things you can write down in unisexual and bisexual flowers or plants. Question 3, name the reproductive parts of the plant. You need to, I would suggest you to name out all the parts, like the male one that has two different portions, name both of them. Then moving to the female part, then you have to answer or put down all the, I would say, the female reproductive parts over there. It's divided into 4 parts. Name all those parts and then also write the function. Okay. Further, few more questions here. Enlist the event or by step of seed formation, how it happens when the stigma or when the pollen grains reach the stigma, what happens after that. Explain it in detail. Please, these questions can of course be there on your school assignments as well, where if they can ask you even to draw and then list down the steps how the event are happening, like how the seed formation is happening. Then comes another very, very important question, that is, what is pollination? List the types of pollinations in brief. Okay, so there are multiple kinds of pollination. There can be through different agents as well. There are multiple agents. Mention those as well. Then write down self-pollination as well, and then transfer through different agents. Okay, moving further, question 6, enlist the factors that are responsible for pollination. Okay, so you have to here specifically write down the factors that are responsible for pollination. Further, I would just like to, I would sum up the entire session, what we have learned today. We learned about sexual reproduction, reproductive parts in the plant. Then we read about pollination. Moving further, we also discussed about different types of pollination and how fruits and flowers are forming, that we, at the end, we did that. Okay, so thank you everybody. Thank you for joining today's grade 7 session about sexual reproduction in plants. Further, I would request you, if you have not yet subscribed the channel, please do subscribe it. Press the bell icon and never miss any update on the coming online sessions or videos that are uploaded on Swiflearn. Thank you everybody for joining in. Hope to see you soon again.